You know that sound when a $50,000 machine decides to eat itself in 15 seconds? That grinding, screaming metal noise that makes your teeth hurt and your bank account cry? That's what my revenge sounded like on the day I took down the MBA who tried to delete my life's work. I'm Russell Murphy, 55 years old, and I've spent the last 32 years keeping this Michigan stamping plant running like a Swiss watch. Well, more like a beat-up Timex that's been through 3 wars, but it keeps perfect time if you know how to wind it. The morning it all started, I was standing next to line 7, my problem child. She's a 15-year-old CNC machining center that cuts engine block housings for Ford. Most days she purrs like a kitten. But when the humidity drops below 35%, she gets cranky. The servo motors start to drift, and the cutting tolerance goes from perfect to scrap metal real quick. I was adjusting the coolant flow when I heard those footsteps. You know the type. Expensive Italian leather tapping on concrete like a woodpecker with anxiety. I didn't turn around. "You're in the safety zone," I said to the air. "Unless you're rated for high-pressure hydraulics, you're about 2 feet from voiding your life insurance." "Russell, right?" "The legacy systems specialist." I turned then. It was Landon Hayes, our new operations director, fresh out of Northwestern's MBA program, probably 31 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than my truck. He held his tablet like it was the Holy Grail and looked at my grease-stained coveralls like I was something that crawled out of a drain. "Senior manufacturing engineer," I corrected, wiping lithium grease on a rag that had seen 3 decades of honest work. "And you must be the optimization expert corporate sent down to tell us why we need to do more with less." "Landon," he said, offering a hand that looked like it had never touched anything rougher than a computer keyboard. I held up my wrench instead. He pulled his hand back like I was contagious. "Actually, it's Director of Modernization. We're looking to pivot the operational paradigm." Pivot. The word tasted like aluminum foil. Is that fancy talk for fixing things that aren't broken? He laughed that hollow laugh you hear in corporate training videos. "That's the thing about legacy mindsets, Russell. You see not broken. I see inefficient. I've been reviewing the logs. You spend 40% of your time on manual overrides for line 7. That's wasted bandwidth." I stared at him. I wanted to explain that line 7 wasn't just a machine. She was a collection of patches and workarounds that had evolved over 15 years. I wanted to tell him that my manual overrides were me nursing a firmware conflict that the original manufacturer stopped supporting when Clinton was president. But I could see he wasn't listening. He was hearing the podcast in his head where he's the hero saving the quarterly numbers. "We have a meeting in 20 minutes, Landon said, tapping his tablet. "All senior staff. I'm unveiling the roadmap. I think you'll find it illuminating." "I'll be there," I said, soon as I convinced line 7 not to eat the next batch of aluminum blocks. He walked away, stepping delicately over a pneumatic hose like it was a rattlesnake. I watched him go, my gut tightening. It wasn't the usual job stress, missed deadlines or parts shortages. This was something colder, like watching storm clouds roll in over Lake Michigan. I finished the coolant adjustment. Line 7 hummed back into perfect rhythm. Thrum, click, whoosh, music to my ears. "Don't worry, girl," I whispered, patting the safety cage. "I won't let the suit hurt you." But walking toward the conference room, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. I stopped by my toolbox. Hidden behind a stack of manuals for a PLC system that went obsolete in 2010 was a small USB drive. I'd kept it there for 5 years, backup of a backup, ghost image of the entire plant's control architecture. Every patch, every line of code that held this place together. For the first time in half a decade, I took it out and slipped it into my pocket. It felt heavy, like carrying a loaded gun. The conference room was air-conditioned to Arctic levels. The old guard was there. Carlos from maintenance, Lisa from QC, Wade the floor foreman. They all looked like people waiting for bad news. Landon stood at the head of the table behind a PowerPoint that glowed with buzzwords: synergy, optimization, right-sizing. "Welcome, team," he beamed. "I've spent 2 weeks observing, and I have to be honest. I'm shocked at the reliance on tribal knowledge." He said tribal knowledge like it was a communicable disease. "We have critical dependencies on single individuals. If Russell here gets hit by a bus, line 7 stops. If Carlos wins the lottery, the HVAC dies. This is unacceptable risk." Carlos raised his scarred hand. "Sir, with respect, Your computer doesn't know that the hydraulic seals on press 4 expand differently in January than July. The sensors don't catch that. We do. Landon smiled without warmth. That's exactly the problem, Carlos. You're relying on feel. We need data. Starting today, we're auditing all positions for redundancies. The room went dead quiet. I sat perfectly still, fingers brushing the USB drive in my pocket. Russell, Landon said, and suddenly I was in the crosshairs. Since your role primarily involves maintaining legacy systems, and since we're eliminating those legacy systems, HR will be scheduling a transition meeting with you today. Transition, I said flatly. Standard review, just paperwork. But we need to examine whether expensive legacy maintenance is a luxury we can afford in the modern age. I didn't blink, didn't scream, didn't throw my chair through the window, though the urge was strong enough to taste copper. Understood, I said. My voice was calm. Scary calm. Great! Landon clapped his hands. Out with the old, in with the new. As we filed out, Carlos squeezed my shoulder. Russell, this is bullshit. It's okay, Carlos, I said, and felt a razor-thin smile touch my lips. He wants to modernize. He wants to see what this place looks like without tribal knowledge. I think we should let him. I walked back to my desk in the engineering bay, surrounded by decades of schematics and coffee-stained manuals. I sat down at my terminal and opened the command console. My fingers flew across the keyboard, muscle memory from 30 years of typing in the dark, copying files, encrypting, status, complete. I wasn't stealing anything, just packing my personal belongings. If those belongings happened to include the only functional roadmap to the plant's control logic, well, that was just intellectual property, wasn't it? I leaned back in my chair. The factory floor rumbled beneath me, but it sounded different now, like a beast holding its breath. Okay, Landon, I whispered to the screen. You want to drive? Here are the keys. Hope you know how to work a stick shift. The HR office smelled like vanilla air freshener trying to mask the scent of crushed dreams. I sat in a chair designed for discomfort while Landon and Monica Stewart from HR explained my transition. So, Russell, Landon began, the pivot to Industry 4.0 renders your specific skill set obsolete. It's evolution, not personal. You're like a carburetor in a fuel injection world. He waited for me to be impressed by his metaphor. I see, I said. So, 32 years of keeping this plant at 19.8% uptime makes me a carburetor. Exactly! He pointed at me like I'd won a prize. You get it. Monica pushed papers across the desk. Separation agreement. 2 weeks severance for every 5 years of service. Standard non-disparagement clause. I picked up the paper. The numbers were insulting. Enough to buy a used Honda, maybe. Not enough to cover the knee surgery I'd eventually need from walking on concrete since Reagan was president. And the handover? I asked. Landon laughed that dry corporate laugh. Russell, please, we have documentation. We don't need folklore. The new team starts Monday. They're certified on the new ERP system. He stood up, walked to a shredder, and picked up a folder labeled Contract Renewal, R. Murphy. He held it up for me to see, then fed it into the machine. The paper crunched and died. Digitization, Russell. It's cleaner. If he hadn't done that, if he'd shown even an ounce of respect, I might have warned him. Might have mentioned that Line 7's thermal management system needed manual reset after every thunderstorm. Might have told him about the cascade failure protocols. But watching my future turn into confetti, the last bit of loyalty I had for Gracian Automotive evaporated like coolant on a hot engine. Okay, I said. I signed the papers without reading the fine print. Badge, please, Monica whispered. I unclipped my ID. The photo was 20 years old. I looked younger, less worn down. I laid it on the desk along with my company phone and my heavy ring of keys. Keys to everything that mattered. That's everything, I lied. The USB drive felt warm against my leg. Security walked me to the parking lot. My old Ford F-150 sat there like a faithful dog, more rust than paint but ready to run. I threw my personal box in the passenger seat and sat for a moment, looking back at the massive gray bulk of the factory. I pulled out my personal phone and opened a secure app connected to a diagnostic node I'd set up years ago. Landon's IT team had revoked my company access, sure, but they'd never found the ghost account buried in the lighting control subdirectory. Why would they? They were looking for users, not ghosts. System status, online. User admin ghost permissions, root access. I didn't do anything. Not yet. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but industrial sabotage needs to simmer. "Goodbye, old girl," I said to the factory. The engine roared to life, drowning out the distant hum of production. I gave it 3 days. I was wrong. It only took 2. The first 24 hours were peaceful. That's the thing about momentum. A heavy flywheel keeps spinning even after you cut the power. Landon probably celebrated with expensive coffee, thinking he'd amputated dead weight without spilling blood. But entropy is patient. Carlos called me on a burner phone. "Russell, it started on line 7, the precision machining line. Those robotic arms dancing around aluminum blocks, cutting with tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch." Landon had pushed his system upgrade Monday morning, rerouting control from my local servers to his cloud-based ERP, seamless integration he'd called it. At 10:15 a.m., the timing drift started, just 200 milliseconds of latency between cloud server and physical motors. In high-speed manufacturing, that's an eternity, the difference between perfect cuts and expensive scrap. Carlos said the sound changed first. The smooth hiss-pop of the cutters turned into stuttering confusion. The arms started hesitating, waiting for instructions from a conductor who was asleep. "Stop the line," Wade had shouted from the floor. Landon, watching from his glass tower, waved him off. Calibration phase. Machine learning is adjusting to workflow patterns, so they let it run. At 10:45, Arm 4 moved to cut a channel that Arm 2 hadn't positioned yet. Instead of cutting aluminum, it cut empty air, swung around, and clipped the safety cage. Sparks showered down like cheap fireworks. Emergency stop. Line dead. That expensive silence that costs $200 a minute. "Maintenance," Landon barked over the intercom. "What's wrong with the hardware?" That was his first mistake, blaming the hardware. Carlos and his crew swarmed the machine. Motors, good. Voltage, good. Everything green. The hardware was fine. The brain was broken. "It's the timing, boss," Carlos yelled up to the observation deck. "New system's lagging. We need local control loop." "No reverts," Landon shouted, face turning red. "Cloud is standard. Fix the latency." "Can't fix the speed of light with a wrench," Carlos shot back. Meanwhile, in the server room, Landon's IT team was sweating. Kids who knew Python but couldn't identify a servo motor with a field guide. They tried to overwrite my legacy protocols but kept hitting the same wall. Error 403. Forbidden. Admin rights required. Contact system architect. "Who's the system architect?" Austin, the IT kid, asked. "Documentation says R. Murphy," another replied, "but his account's deleted." "Then who has the admin keys?" They didn't have the keys. I had the keys. And I was currently sitting on a porch in Traverse City, 200 miles away, drinking coffee that didn't taste like coolant and watching seagulls fight over French fries. Landon stormed into the server room. "Why is line 7 down? I promised corporate 15% efficiency boost by noon." "We're locked out," the head IT kid stammered. "Legacy partition controls the critical timing. Can't override without root password." "Hack it," Landon screamed. "Brute force it. If we brute force, we might corrupt safety protocols. Whole system could lock up. I don't care. We're hemorrhaging money. Bypass safety if you have to." Oh, Landon. Sweet, stupid Landon. Bypassing safety protocols on a machining line is like removing the brakes from a freight train because they slow you down. Sure, you'll go faster for a minute, but the stop is going to be spectacular. My phone buzzed. Alert from my Ghost app. Safety override initiated. Thermal limits disabled on line 7. Collision detection disabled. I stared at the screen. He actually did it. Turned off the guardrails. I could have stopped him. Could have sent a command to re-engage the locks. Could have saved him from himself, but he'd shredded my contract. Called my life's work obsolete. I put the phone down and made a sandwich. At 1:30 p.m., line 7 fired up again. Landon stood on his observation deck like a ship captain, arms crossed, confident in his course, oblivious that he'd just ordered the crew to scuttle the hull. The robotic arms came to life without the bloated safety code checking positions every 4 milliseconds. They moved faster, smoother. For 90 seconds, Landon looked like a genius. Then the sensor on Station 5 failed. Normally, sensor failure triggers soft halt. Machine slows, double checks, parks itself safely if the reading's still bad. Takes 10 seconds. Annoying but safe. But Landon had bypassed soft halt. He wanted speed, continuous flow. When the sensor failed to report the position of an aluminum block, the robot didn't pause. It assumed the block was where it should be and swung the high-torque cutter forward at 6 feet per second. The block wasn't there. The hydraulic clamp for the next station was crunch, not just a bump. The robot drove the cutter through the clamp, shearing titanium bolts and bending the primary axle. The sound was like a gunshot followed by screaming metal. Hydraulic fluid sprayed across the aisle like arterial blood. Fire alarms blared as fluid hit hot cutting tips and ignited. "Fire on line 7, Carlos screamed, grabbing extinguishers. They fought the blaze with chemical foam, destroying thousands in raw material. Landon stood frozen on his deck, face pale. His efficiency boost had just become catastrophic failure. Damage report: robot arm 4 destroyed, $40,000. Hydraulic assembly total loss, $10,000. Downtime minimum 48 hours. And then the red phone rang. Not internal line. The bat phone. Direct to CEO Pierce Goldman. Goldman was a numbers guy who didn't understand code but understood profit. His dashboard showed real-time production output and it had just flatlined. "Why am I looking at 0 on line 7? Goldman's voice boomed over speakerphone. "And why did I get automated alert about fire suppression?" "Sir," Landon stammered, "we encountered minor hardware anomaly during migration. Sensor malfunction." "Sensor? We replaced those 6 months ago. Russell handled that project. Said they were good for 5 years. The name hung in the air like poison gas." "Well, Russell isn't here to verify that," Landon deflected. "His legacy configuration might have masked the defect. Masked it or managed it." Goldman was sharp. "I was told this transition would be seamless. You said Russell was redundant. Right now that redundancy looks like it cost me 50 grand and counting. It's a hiccup, sir. We'll have it online by second shift." "You better, because if we miss Friday's shipment to Ford, it won't be sensors we replace." Line went dead. Landon slammed down the phone and turned to the IT lead. "Fix it. Why did override fail?" "It didn't fail, sir," Austin whispered. "Did exactly what you told it. But looking at logs, system tried to access subroutine called Safety V4. Path blocked because we revoked author permissions." "Who was the author?" Austin gulped. R. Murphy. Landon stared at the screen. "Scrub it. Delete all references. Build new safety patch from scratch." "Sir, writing safety kernel from scratch takes weeks. You have until tomorrow morning." Meanwhile, I was walking along Grand Traverse Bay, skipping stones across the water. 4 skips. Not bad for a guy with arthritis. I checked my phone periodically, watching error logs pile up like autumn leaves. Watching frantic attempts to rewrite code I'd perfected over a decade. They were trying to learn a language I'd invented without a dictionary. I felt a twinge of guilt. Not for Landon. He could rot. But for the machines. Hated seeing them abused. And for the guys still on the floor, Carlos probably working doubles cleaning hydraulic fluid. But this had to happen. If I called now, offered help, Landon would claim credit. Say he managed the consultant transition. Learn nothing. No. The lesson had to be expensive. Had to hurt. By Wednesday morning, the factory felt like a hospital where the patient was crashing and the doctors were arguing over textbooks. Line 7 still down. Lines 3 and 5 running half speed because operators were terrified to push buttons. Landon looked like he'd aged 10 years in 48 hours. Wrinkled suit, manic energy replacing confidence. The IT squad had spent the night trying to exorcise my digital ghost. But every time they rebooted to apply changes, my profile restored itself. "How is that possible?" Landon demanded, chugging his 5th energy drink. "Computers don't have souls. It's the architecture, sir," Austin the IT kid explained, pulling up a schematic that looked like spaghetti thrown at a wall. "Core kernel checks for master signature on boot up. If it doesn't find architect key, initiate system restore to prevent data corruption. And the architect key is Russell Murphy's personal encryption token. He didn't just write patches, sir. He wrote the bootloader. We're not upgrading a program. We're trying to do brain surgery on a patient who's awake and fighting back." Landon slammed his fist on the desk. "Wipe it. Format the drives. Factory reset." Dead silence. Roy, a grizzled tech who'd been there since the 90s, spoke up from the back. "You don't want to do that, son. Excuse me? Factory reset means settings from 1998. DOS prompts. Robots forget they have hands. You lose calibration data for every machine on the floor. I don't care about 1998, Landon yelled. I have cloud backup of current settings. The cloud backup that failed to sync because of latency issues? Roy asked dryly. Landon looked at the server rack, looked at red numbers on the production board. He was cornered. Smart man would have stopped. Called the one person who could fix it and begged. But Landon wasn't smart. He was proud. Do it, he whispered. Factory reset. Wipe the legacy partition. Austin typed the command with shaking hands. This will take whole plant offline, not just line 7. Everything. Lights, HVAC, door locks. Burn it down if you have to. Just get her out of my system. Austin pressed enter. Screens flickered and died. Server fans wound down. Out on the floor, lights cut out. Emergency sodium lamps kicked in, bathing silent factory in sickly orange. Complete dead silence. Boot the new image, Landon smiled. Austin pressed power. Text scrolled. Booting. Loading OS. Error. Boot device not found. System architect signature required. It wiped the OS, Austin whispered, but BIOS firmware still looks for her signature. Won't accept new image. Suddenly, message appeared on main screen. Not system error, text routed through emergency gateway. Message from admin Ghost. Did you just try to format my brain, Landon? That was rude. Landon stared, mouth open. She's watching us. He's not hacking, Roy said, putting on his coat. You tried to break into a house he built and triggered the burglar alarm. I'm going home. Call me when you hire an adult. The factory had been dark 16 hours when Pierce Goldman arrived. Delivery trucks lined up at loading docks, drivers confused because electronic gates wouldn't open. Carlos called me at 7 a.m., voice tight with panic. Russell, he's lost his mind. Got contractors trying to hotwire main bus, bypass digital lockouts mechanically. I sat up straight. Hot wiring? That's 480 volts. If they reverse phases, I know. Motors run backward. Pumps, fans, everything. Morning shift still inside, break room waiting for power. My blood ran cold. Backward motors weren't just expensive, they were bombs. Ventilation fans pulling exhaust into plant. Heavy presses cycling wrong, shattering, sending shrapnel through walls. Carlos, get everyone back to fence line. What are you going to do? Pull the plug. Permanently. I opened messaging app. Contact saved as Grace in main bus. Cellular modem wired directly into master breaker panel. Typed one word, execute. I pressed send. 300 miles away, tiny relay clicked. Then thunderclap. Boom. Sound of 3 massive fuses blowing simultaneously. 10,000 amps hitting brick wall. Factory was stone dead. The cost was astronomical. Goldman stood in parking lot wearing cashmere coat, staring at blackened power shed door. Landon beside him, covered in soot. Explain, Goldman said, voice terrifyingly quiet. Sabotage, Landon sputtered. Domestic terrorism. Goldman turned to look at him. Fire marshal says fuses blew because system detected illegal phase sequence. Says if those fuses hadn't blown, main transformers would have exploded. Whoever triggered that lockout saved this building. He didn't hack you, Landon. He stopped you from committing negligent homicide. Now we have dead factory. You're done. Get off my property. My phone rang 11 o'clock a.m. Let it go to voicemail, then text from Goldman. Name your price. I waited 10 minutes, replied, I'm retired. But I do consulting. Triple my old salary. Written apology. Not to me, to the machines. Done. When can you be here? 3 hours away. Don't touch anything. When I arrived, IT team looked at me like returning Messiah in flannel shirt. Boot it up, I said to Austin. We can't. OS is gone. Drives you can see are gone. I pulled out USB drive, plugged into main console. Carlos hit auxiliary power. Fans roared. Screens flickered. Beautiful thing happened. Reading USB. Signature found. R. Murphy. Restoring system state pre-Landon. It's all coming back, Austin whispered. Everything. I turned to Goldman. Factory's confused. Had a stroke. Needs 2 weeks of babysitting. Whatever you need. Consulting contract. 250 hour, 6-month minimum. Landon's office becomes break room with good coffee machine. Deal. 3 days later, plant was back at 90% capacity. Goldman called town hall meeting. I want to apologize, he said. I listened to wrong voice. Thought new meant better. Forgot experience is only thing you can't download. He looked at me. Russell has agreed to stay as senior systems architect. Real applause. Whistling, hooting kind. One more thing, I said. Mr. Goldman, you owe someone an apology. Not the team. Her. I pointed to line 7. You let stranger hurt her. Tell her you're sorry. Goldman walked to safety cage, placed hand on yellow metal. I'm sorry, he shouted. Line 7 hissed and completed perfect cut. Sparks flew like nod. Accepted. 6 months later, factory hums with different sound. Deeper, richer. Austin's walking interns through sensor array. Don't trust auto calibration. Listen to servo. If it whines, it's thirsty. If it clicks, it's angry. Respect the machine. Kid's all right, I could retire for real. Take money, move to Florida. But I look at line 7 moving with hypnotic rhythm. She's dancing. If I leave, eventually someone will come who doesn't know the steps. Someone who thinks new is always better. Forgets legacy doesn't mean old, means survived. I lean into microphone. All right, second shift. Let's have good run. Safety first. Don't touch red buttons. Press enter. One sharp click. Execute. Lights brighten. Hum rises to roar. Factory breathes. So do I. 32 years I've been listening to this symphony. Some suits tried to turn it into elevator music, but the old songs are the best songs, and I'm still the conductor.